Hi, today's video is stacked with fun titles. We have two unusual and one-of-a-kind RPGs, an incredible board party game, most likely the very first ever survivor horror, and it's not what you think. And finally, a police management slash simulation that's very grown-up and unexpectedly addictive. So, let's not waste any more time here and jump straight in. You know what I like about video games other than playing them, that is? When they do something thought-provoking, innovative, unique or not done before. And Threads of Fate for Sony PlayStation does indeed do some of these things. It's an action-adventure role-playing that's unlike other games in the genre. For one, it offers two different main characters to choose from. Rue, an amnesiac young warrior who witnesses his close friend and caretaker being killed by an armored man and seeks to revive her. And Mint, selfish and self-centered princess of East Haven Kingdom that has been removed from power and banished by his sister Maya. She hopes to reclaim the throne and then conquer the world. So as you can see, the motivations of both potential protagonists couldn't have been more different. How are they both aiming to achieve such incredible feats and fulfill their dreams, you may wonder? Well, they do not buy lottery tickets, that's for sure, they don't pray, or even if they do, then not for that, and they don't seek help on crowdfunding websites, mainly because they were known back then yet. They seek a mythical Ian artifact known as Prism that is said to grant any wishes to those who can acquire it. Finding something that's long lost may not be the easiest of tasks, especially that you don't know where to look for it, but it's still much more plausible than that lottery win or help from the above. I don't want to spoil the story any more than I already did, especially that it's not overly long one, but I'll tell you one more thing. If you like big revelations, surprises and plot twists, Threads of Fate is definitely worth your time. Depending on which of the two you will pick, the game will offer a different storyline shown from the character's perspective. They will, however, cross paths multiple times throughout the game's run. Initially they will be at odds given the differences between them and their outlook on life, but in time they will help each other when exploring the ancient ruins. Both also end the game in Valen's fortress, the quote-unquote villain of the game, despite the different paths leading to it. Threads of Fate is set in and around the hub town of Karna, connected to its areas and numerous dungeon environments that unlock with the story. Or stories, I should say really, as the protagonists that we get to learn about throughout the plot not only have completely unique to them motivations, but also backgrounds, adventures and most importantly, combat and gameplay abilities, which translates to both of them encountering different puzzles related to their particular abilities and obstacles that fit their particular skill sets. In combat, Rue can collect up to 5 coins from defeated enemies and then transform into them, gaining access to their characteristics, attacks and powers, which is not only useful, but also quite fun. And Mint uses dual rings as both melee and ranged weapons and can combine magic spells with elemental abilities. Combat is real-time and action-packed, and while it requires a minute of your time to get used to, when you do eventually, it feels like a second nature, despite its sometimes a tad fast pace. Interestingly enough, neither Rue or Mint earn experience like in most RPGs, and the character progression is done by a very interesting solution. HP rises based on damage taken and MP on the number of times magic was used. It's an unusual approach to leveling up, or progression really, and for the most part I gotta say that in a game that's more focused on action than strategy, it works quite well. Defeated enemies drop HP and MP refill bottles, items and different types of coins. These coins can be exchanged in a town of Karn for in-game currency that then can be used in a shop. Threads of Fate? More like Threads of Fail. I mean, I still believe it's a title that deserved much more acclaim and popularity than it ever did, but its obscurity can be traced back to whomever was a genius to release it alongside extremely strong competition of Chrono Cross and Legend of Mana, arguably the strongest competition on the platform for the entire year. Both of these were much longer adventures, more well known, and at least in case of Chrono Cross, being sort of a sequel to Chrono Trigger, also awaited. Either way, Threads definitely deserved to be played, and since it never got to land in most of our PlayStation CD drives back then, why not do it today? If there's more of you, 2, 3 or 4 even, then Jones in the fast lane is great. I mean, if you're alone it's good fun too, but it's being able to compete against others what makes it exceptional. Oh, you don't know what that is yet, do you? Well, let me explain. Ever heard of a little title known as The Sims? Good. Jones in the fast lane is nothing like it. Not even a bit. What a start, eh? I started with telling you what it's not. So stupid. I mean, I could carry on and say that it's not Doom, Lemmings, Wipeout, or even Maniac Mansion. And you know what? It's not Need for Speed either, despite the fast lane being right there in the title. But that Sims mention was not there for no reason. Now, whenever you sent out your Sims to work, they would disappear and then came back after 8 or whatever hours, right? And Jones in the fast lane, despite releasing years before Sims, kinda shows more or less what happens during these 8 hours. Well, not really, but it feels like it. It's also a little bit like Monopoly, so it's a real weird mix if you ask me. Weird, but playable. Anyway, in reality, it's basically a life simulator presented in a turn-based board game format. The board represents the city that you live in, let's call it Fartopolis, because it sounds much better than it what really is, and let me tell you, there are a lot of different places, locations, services and opportunities in Fartopolis. But not to spoil all the fun, you'll get to learn about most of them when playing. You start the game by selecting goals that you want to achieve throughout it, and they can be centered around money, happiness, education or career. The higher you set them to, the longer the game will take. Wealth goal is achieved by acquiring a certain amount of money in the bank, shares and cash in hand combined. Happiness is reached by achieving other personal goals, buying stuff, because everyone wants to have stuff, and by taking time off work. Completing a particular number of available university qualifications fulfills education. And career? Well, it requires you to get a job and get promoted until you reach a certain required management level. While these all may sound simple, they will actually take a bit of time to reach, and it will be so fun you wouldn't believe. Each turn represents a week of your life in Fartopolis, and every movement or action that you take eats up a portion of your available time. Unlike in Monopoly though, you can move around the board in either direction and as far as you'd like, provided that you have enough time available to do so. So Jones in the Fast Lane is as much about picking the right places to go to fast track your goals as it is about time management. And at times, it may be advisable to partake in a couple of less optimal activities on your way to your true goals location, rather than spending 2-3 turns just traveling and doing nothing. It's a balancing act and should be treated as such. It's nearly always advisable, however, to start with seeking employment, at least when you're new to Fartopolis, as you'll need money. Not only for many of the actions that you'll be performing during the week, but also for the end of the week, when on weekends, or when the weekend event plays out, using up a portion of your cash on entertainment activities. And weekends are an important part of a healthy work-life balance, and also that happiness goal too. Funny enough, if you make a purchase during the weekend event is likely to be based off that thing. If you don't want to waste money, don't have money or deposited all of it before the weekend in the bank, the event won't take place. Initially, when you have no education, no work experience or even nice clothes, there's not that much to choose from in terms of jobs, and only the lowest paid positions are available. No job is something to be ashamed of though, and as the time passes, you learn experience and enroll in various courses, which can be a base for promotion or even allow you to switch careers to a higher paying industry. Some jobs, and especially higher positions at them, often come with their own requirements which need to be met for the employment to even be possible, like having to own expensive clothing and such. I've been talking about working a lot, which believe you me, I hate because I'm not cut out to be a worker, but it's actually not mandatory to work in Jones in the Fast Lane per se. I mean, you still need money to support yourself, at least as much as it's required to pay rent and buy food, because you should eat, at the very least once per week, as if you won't, a hunger will set in and it will limit your available weekly time quota. Like I said though, technically speaking, work isn't something you have to do, it's your choice. Kinda like in real life. I mean, I can decide one day not to work at all and just move under the bridge, near the train station or in some kind of an abandoned shed and just carry on like that. Same as in life, in Jones you can purchase a lottery ticket and win, which may be unlikely but definitely is not impossible, and then work would be all but mandatory. You can also save up a bit of money, quit your job and start trading on the stock market, which is a bit less unlikely to bring in cash, but also not a foolproof solution, as markets tend to crash or at the very least drop. Either way, if you get into money, whichever the way you do that, a lot of opportunities open up. You can buy many useful items, like household appliances to name a few, or even completely useless luxury ones, serving only as that bling that you carry on yourself to telegraph your wealth and social status to all the hard-working normies around you. You can switch apartments and basically do what I claimed initially, so simulate an entire grown-up life within the game's environment. While getting to your pre-chosen goals is a barrel of laughs and all, it has to be noted that Jones also features many negative fail states, like being pickpocketed, robbed, or the bank may have a glitch in their system that remove any trace of your savings from it. Simulating the non-existent Y2K bug, how convenient for the bankers. You may also lose your job, the economy may shift and influence prices of everything as much as your wages. There are a lot of these bad situations that may, and probably will, eventually happen to you too. Jones in the Fast Lane is a lot of fun. It truly is, but it gets exponentially better the more of you are playing. I mean, I know that it could be said about a lot of games, but board, tabletop and party games, which are made from ground up to be enjoyed by more than one person, benefit from that even more. And Jones is definitely one of these games. I love nearly everything about Jones in the Fast Lane. Its interesting and unique premise, beautiful digitized graphics, excellent sound design and even early iteration of lip sync in the CD version. It's all great. I have one small, minor, little, tiny, itty-bitty complaint about single-player mode though. Namely, you can't lose in it. Regardless how down you're on your luck and how poor you are, there is always a way out of it all. Which is fine in multiplayer, where you don't want to lose the player mid-game because of few terrible random events, but in single, you should be able to straight up fail. Still, it's a minor thing, and other than that, and also given when John's released, it's a fantastic little party title, and one worth having a go at in a group of friends once in a while. You could say a lot of great things about both Commodore 64 and games that released for it, because given the limited capabilities of 8-bit home computers of the 80s, it was a system that truly could. It aimed higher than it was designed to reach, and then did that despite all odds. Reach those imaginary heights, that is. Project Firestart is one of the very few truly cinematic feeling experiences on C64, and one of the progenitors of the entire survival horror genre, at least as much as lowly C64 could try to pull off. It's a side-scrolling action-adventure title taking place in the year 2061. A spaceship Prometheus, no relation to the Alien franchise movie of the same name, is orbiting Titan. The communications with it dropped a little while back, and there's no way to tell what happened. All that is known is that it was a space lab type of a vessel, and that it was running a genetic experiment codenamed Project Firestart. It was supposed to provide us with strong, durable, and genetically modified miners. The moral implications of such experiments are questionable at best, but given what's happening in our world today, I can tell you now that I see the future of Project Firestart being not only feasible, but even impending, and probably even faster than in 36 years. Anyway, since Prometheus remains silent and doesn't respond to any hails or attempts of contact, it is decided that something terrible must have happened and that someone has to reach the craft and deal with it. And by deal with it, I mean recover all the scientific data found on the ship and then destroy it, leaving no traces of unethical experiments behind. Well, the official explanation is that the project must have been compromised and may pose risk to Earth, and that's why the ship needs to be put out of commission. But we've all been here long enough on YouTube to see through the facade, and we know the real reason for the mission. Either way, you play as John Hawking, and you're the one to send to do the deed. You are informed that in the event of your failure, the ship will be destroyed remotely, so, well, don't fail. Since you are naturally universe's toughest and bravest badass, and also a triple gold medal winner at hot dog eating contest across 2 southern US states and Moon, you're the only one that's both capable of fulfilling the mission and figuring out what happened, and also silly enough to volunteer. Sorry, but you did volunteer when you've put that Project Firestart game in your disk drive. When you get to the ship eventually, dock and set your first few steps inside, you begin noticing some gruesome and omnipresent evidence of something terrible that must have happened. Something that's difficult to explain. And while numerous corpses in various stadiums of rot that you find all over the Prometheus suggest that the scientists were killed by an unknown and extremely brutal creatures, there are no signs of them anywhere anymore. At least not yet. That, however, will change soon enough, within like a minute or two of gameplay, whether you want to or not, the horror will begin. As it turns out, the ship is infested with large and hostile creatures. So while you will work your ass off trying to figure out what happened, trying to uncover the clues that will lead you to the initial chain of events explaining what caused the massacre, you will have to fight monsters, and let me tell you, you will never be in a privileged position. As in most other great games in the survival horror genre, you will always struggle with the weaponry, or lack thereof, the ammunition will always be limited, and escaping the enemies will more often than not be a much better choice than facing them in combat. In fact, you should avoid combat if only possible, and focus on puzzling and solving the mystery behind everyone on Prometheus being dead. So you'll be studying logs and journals of the personnel, you'll find and put together environmental clues scattered here and there, and in doing all that, you'll slowly start uncovering the history of the genetic project and learning of the atrocities that took place on board the ill-fated vessel. You will also have a chance of finding and rescuing of the sole survivor, and that's something you should definitely consider. For a C64 game, Project Firestart looks phenomenal. More like an early 16-bit title and not a late 8-bit one. Especially that its design is very cinematic, with many of the screens looking like shots from high-budget movies, naturally brought down to C64's hardware capabilities. Numerous cutscenes playing out upon being triggered by different events, time or your actions add to the feeling, and it's something you'd not expect to experience on such a small system. What's more, even the ending, or endings I should say really, as there's quite a few of them, all depend on how you went through the entire game. And they are dependent not only on the outcome of the main plot, but also on all the puzzles that you did or did not solve. It's perhaps nothing special today, but in 1989, it was virtually unheard of. No game is perfect though. Well, maybe apart from Fury of the Fairies and First Life is Strange. So let me tell you what I found not to be so great about Project Firestart. For one, some of the enemy sprites look a little blocky and feel like they could have benefited from a few more frames of animation so that they would move more fluidly. And for second, the combat is clunky and difficult to get used to. It's not impossibly demanding, mind you, but definitely adds to the already rather heavy atmosphere of being locked inside a ticking bomb full of deadly monsters and trying to find data that you personally care very little for. Neither of these should be a factor in deciding whether to test Project Firestart or not, as it's a must-play C64 game and one that's more than you would ever expect from such a low-powered system. It's also interesting to experience what could possibly be the very first survival horror ever made. Remember how 3 games ago I told you that I like games that do something different than what most others in the respective genres do? Wow, what a sentence. Well, Baten Kaitos Eternal Wings and The Lost Ocean does just that. And I don't even mean having an unusually long title, even if it actually does. Baten Kaitos, which in Latin means the one who ate most pickled eggs at the pickle eggs eating contest, is a Japanese RPG in which you don't really play as the game's protagonist. I mean, you still direct the party around the game world and issue commands to them in combat, but all the interactions that you have with the protagonist are through the preset extended text dialogues, as you actually play as a guardian spirit and not the hero of the game, which means that you serve more of a guiding role than the decision maker, though your answers will influence and impact choices made in the game. The characters in the party will actually address you themselves quite often, seeking counsel, and your answers will help them make their decisions. Interestingly enough, if you answer them in a way that's aligned with their character, it will strengthen their bonds and they will perform better in combat. The entire gameplay system revolves around magical cards known as Magnus, which absorb the essence of real-world objects for both storage and use purposes. Think of them as Pokeball, but not only used to hold Pikachu and his 75,000 different kinds of brethren, but also items. You know, an easy way to carry a lot of things without a backpack. And since there are over 1000 unique Magnus cards in the game, you'll have a lot of fun playing Baten Kaitos. So Magnus containing food and medicine can be used as such when necessary. Magnus weapons and armor can be equipped on your characters, and Magnus that carries battle moves can be added to the battle deck and used in combat. Magnus cards can often be also used in conversations as items to complete quests or reveal additional information. I know it may sound like a lot, like a convoluted mess of a mechanic, but it's actually pretty intuitive and you'll get used to it fast. What's more, and that's a fun modifier to what's already an innovative set of mechanics, Magnus cards are not frozen in time. What I mean by that is that they can change in real time, same as the objects that they hold would. So for instance, a Milk Magnus, with time, will change into Cheese Magnus, and as such heal you even more. And Banana Magnus will change into Rotten Banana Magnus, but I wouldn't advise consuming that one under any circumstances. You can also combine some Magnus cards during battles for stronger effects, both offensive and defensive, but that's something you should really figure out all by yourself, because it's rather fun and each new combo found feels really rewarding. And finally, you can take picture of monster enemies with a camera Magnus too, and then sell them for varying amounts of money depending on the creature's rarity and the quality of the image. Which is kinda similar to N64's Pokémon Snap, a game where you took pictures of rare Pokémon in the wild rather than having them train and battle. And that's like our crash course on Magnus cards completed, and everything else about them will come to you naturally when playing. Each of your party members needs to have an assigned deck of Magnus cards prior battles, and this will be the basis upon which they will quote-unquote draw random hands during combat. Battles are quite innovative too, splitting each turn into turn-based and real-time modes, so offensive and defensive sections respectively, and that makes all combat sequences feel both strategic and action-packed at the same time. Experience points for winning battles can be used to level up your party members, but it can only be done at a charge. Level increases raise your primary attributes such as health points, strength and defense ability, and you can even occasionally class up, which is just a fancy way of saying that your character's deck will have an extended capacity for cards. Since we know now how Baten Kaitos works, it's time that we figure out what it's all about. You're Kalas, you're not Kalas, you're Kalas's guardian spirit, and one upon which Kalas and his soon-to-be party members will pose tons of questions that will in turn guide them on their quest. Kalas is a young man who was born with just one wing. Because yeah, in the Skyrim the game is set in, everyone has wings. And no wonder, as it's a series of suspended in the air lands, spread with skies, clouds and freedom. Also terrible, painful and bloody death if you don't know how or can't fly. Well, since Kalas has only one wing, he had to have an artificial one added to, not fall infinitely between suspended in the air land masses. But it's not the wings, or lack thereof, that the game is all about. It's all about Kalas's brother and grandfather that were brutally murdered. And they sadly were. And now, our hero, to a certain degree is mentally damaged, possibly forever. This terrible event left such a mark on Kalas that in order to put the entire situation behind him, he sees no other way forward than a mission of a bloody and painful revenge. Mission that will in time, as you uncover more of it, evolve into an evil conspiracy threatening the entire country, and our party of braves are the only ones willing to prevent the catastrophe. While Baten Kaitos may have not sold well, or gained widespread popularity for that matter either, and the reasons for that are aplenty, and not only GameCube's rather obscurity as compared to Xbox and PS2, in time, years after it released, it gained a small but faithful cult following. Most that had a chance to play it swear by it and remember it fondly, so give it a chance. This is the Police 2 is a title that does a lot, and I mean it. It's a game of one plot and many genres. It's a layered onion of a title, and each next layer peeled makes it more interesting, but also more onion. For some it may be a title that's too chaotic, too uneven or even unplayable, and for others it may be a dream come true. I wonder what it would be for you. You play as Jack Boyd, former police chief of Freeburg, who had fled the city as a result of being framed for several crimes. You are now hiding in Sharpwood under the name of Warren Nash, and while you try to stay low, you somehow find yourself in the custody of a local sheriff. Being quite experienced ex-chief and seeing what and whom the newly appointed town sheriff Lily Reed has to deal with, you somehow talk your way into her letting you assist in running the sheriff's office. So while it may start off like an episode of a budget police cop comedy drama, it will eventually evolve into a much deeper and complex plot that will keep you on the edge of your seat all throughout. Especially that it's a tale about crime, police work, corruption, literal and proverbial, and people and their stories. This is the Police 2 is first and foremost a management game, so we'll not only be managing the office and its day-to-day activities, but also a whole set of unique cops, each with their own history, background, personality and set of stats that fall under intelligence, speed, shooting, strength, negotiation and stealth. And let me tell you, all of these stats work, matter and are important. I mean, you may prefer to send someone fast and accurate to deal with the shootout, to have it contained ASAP with no random victims and perp either cuffed or downed, but in the same time, a heated argument is best solved by an officer who's a smooth talker, so a negotiator. And picking the right man for the right call, which you will be answering a lot of, is a key to success. So learning strong and weak sides of your team, being able to predict what the situation may evolve into, keeping in mind its location, and being able to make an educated guess who to send in response to a particular problem is what you'll be doing a lot. By succeeding and failing you will gain experience which in time will make you a better cop. Sounds simple, right? Well, it's anything but. Because like I said, all cops are unique and all of them are people too, for better or worse. So, some may not like working with particular others, some may be always late or even randomly not show up for work. Some may like to drink, before, on the job and after, and you will have to manage that zoo alone and do it in a way that would keep the town safe. Your officers also have energy levels, so need time off to rest and relax and cannot work all around the clock. Did I mention loyalty yet? I bet I haven't, and I sure should, cause it plays a huge role too. Because some of your cops may not respect you at all, and you'll either have to get rid of them or find a way to gain their trust. Why? I mean, you're in charge, they should listen to you, right? Well, yeah, sure. But don't expect them to follow your orders in combat if they have no faith in your leadership. So as you see, while Wildgun type of a police officer is fun to watch in the movies, they're at the very least problematic when needed to be managed in real life. Cops sent out on calls have to be equipped, and it can be done either automatically or by hand, and while the preset gear is not bad, I feel that it's better to do it yourself, as then you're sure that you're not arriving on the scene unprepared. Your police officers level up after having completed a series of successful calls, and it allows you to increase their attributes and also sometimes unlocks additional perks. Each of them can have up to 4 of these equipped, and they unlock extra abilities in combat. Since we're on the combat, it's top-down, isometric and turn-based. In fact, it plays a lot like XCOM, but with permadeath and no easy mode, meaning that most shots when they land, be it on your team members or the criminals, often mean death. So, following an oldest time rule of slower is better definitely applies here. And it is better to be slow than fast. Plan ahead, think of all the possible outcomes, consequences of your actions and choices, and act only when you're absolutely sure that the call that you're taking is the right one. You can use lethal or non-lethal approach to missions and go in guns blazing or stealthily. Each mission can be solved by a combination of these, and it's figuring out what to pick that's the puzzle here. It's worth pointing out that This is the Police 2 is a rather brutal and gory title, and you will witness excessive violence from both criminals and some of your cruel or even corrupt cops too, so if you're sensitive to that kind of a thing and can't dissociate, it might not be a title for you. successful response calls rewards you beer taps, which is this in-game currency of sorts that allows you to exchange them for new equipment and deputies. On the other hand, failing missions cost you taps, which sucks, and failing terribly 3 times in a row may make Sheriff Reed call in feds, which is not something a fugitive such as yourself would want to happen. The story is told by cel-shaded cutscenes that look a lot like visual books, and while they're not overly detailed, they're nice and stylistic and do an excellent job filling you in with what's going on, involving you in a deeper plot and keeping you entertained. This is the Police 2, may not be a masterpiece, cause hardly any game is, but it's an incredible experience, and especially if you like titles that encompass their strategic/tactical gameplay with grown-up issues, life stories and heavy plot. So what do you think of today's choices? Were they interesting, something you'd like to try out? Or maybe you did, or even play them to this very day? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. And when you're down there tapping on them keys, why not hit those like, sub and bell icons too for YouTube to let you know when I release something new. For me this is all, so stay safe, take care of yourself and I'll talk to you soon.